And now from 17th verse, Krishna is speaking about how one should do Nishkama Karma Yoga to set an example for others. So, uh, so 17th uh, verse onwards, we saw how a self-realized soul, he doesn't have any obligation to the society. He need not work, but yet he works, although he has no duty, but he does obligatory work with detachment. Then 20th verse, we saw how, there is a setting of right example of work, and there was example of Janak Maharaj, which was given. Such a great example for everyone. And then 21st verse, it was spoken about how common men, they follow a great person. That's why there is a right example required. And then 22nd verse, even Krishna is telling that even I engage in the duties. I engage also in the work. Why? Because Krishna says, if I ever fail to engage carefully in performing my duties, then what will happen? Whole world will be put into ruination. So in this way, 24th verse, 23rd, 24th verse, Krishna spoke about that. Now, 25th verse, Krishna said, that's why. So Krishna is speaking now, 25th verse onwards, attached worker and detached worker. The difference between karma kandi and karma yogi. So Krishna is telling that to Arjun that you should act without attachment to set an example. And if you don't do so, if you don't set an example, then there will be chaos in the society. Also 26th verse, Krishna says, don't disturb the ignorant people. So na buddhi bhedam janayed adhyanam karma sanginam joshet sarva karmani vidwan yuktah samacharan. So if you don't set a right example, then what happens? The ignorant people will also follow you, and they will be disturbed in the performance of their duties. And if they don't perform their duties, there will be big trouble in the society, because society also and for themselves also, because although externally they are imitating you, Arjun, who is maybe a self-realized soul, of course Arjun was, but internally because they will not be so qualified to renounce the work. So what will happen is they will simply they'll simply glide down to degradation, and also society will be also put in ruination. So that's why Joshet Sarva Karmani. So Prabhupada in the purport, he spoke also how ignorant people, they cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness. Many times, they cannot understand, neither they can appreciate. So therefore, Lord Krishna is advising Arjun not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. Don't disturb these people and waste valuable time. But devotees, they understand the Lord's purpose, and still they approach ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are most beneficial for all, for everyone. So generally we see that jnana, it is dependent on uh, purity of the heart. So if one has to take to the path of jnana yoga, it requires a lot of purity of heart. And purity of heart means what? One acts without any desire. Without any desire, one performs actions. But bhakti is so strong, is so powerful, that it is not dependent on the purity of heart also. So any person, even though he may be how much ever impure he may be, it is possible to inspire such a person, with faith in bhakti. And then such a person who is inclined, then one can disturb the minds of those attached to action. So if a person is inclined, even though he may be attached and he may not be so pure, still one can directly engage him in the service of the Lord. So that way, even though he may be attached to action, he can be disturbed. Such a person can be disturbed and can be told to take to Krishna consciousness, because those people who have faith in bhakti have no obligation for performing karma. So now the question may be, if a person in knowledge who is Vidwan and the ignorant person both perform work in the similar way, then how to distinguish between them? What's the difference between them? So for that, the 27th verse is spoken. Please recite 27th verse.
Hare Krishna, from yesterday, if nobody is remaining, we can start from the beginning again, alphabetically. Okay. Nobody is remaining, right? To recite the verse.
Prabhuji, I can do. I can recite yesterday.
Okay. Murdal Krishna. Okay.
प्रकृति क्रियमाणानि
प्रकृतेः
Prakrite kriyam.
क्रियमाणानि
पुनः कर्माणि सर्वशः
गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः
अहंकार विमूढात्मा
अहंकार विमूढात्मा
कर्ताहमिति मन्यते.
कर्ताहमिति मन्यते.
Translation: The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature.
Yeah, very important verse, the verse to be memorized. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah. All activities are being carried out by the three modes of material nature. But ahankara vimudhatma, a foolish ignorant soul who is bewildered by false ego, what he does? Kartaham iti manyate. He thinks himself the doer of the activities. Have you seen in Bhagavad Gita that particular painting is there? There is one yellow dressed Mataji, one blue dressed Mataji, and one red dressed Mataji. And all three Matajis are controlling one human beings like Katpotli.
Yes. The laws
Yeah.
of nature book, we have that picture.
Yeah, laws of nature also.
Uh,
So it is referring to this verse. Living entity thinks that I am doing so many things, but we are like puppets in the hands of three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Three Matajis are referring to three modes, and they are controlling the living entity. So although living entity may think, Arey, I'm so powerful, I can do anything in my life, but living entity is being helplessly dragged by the three modes. Hmm. So, so in this way, this verse is telling how the ignorant person, he thinks himself as doer. So, Prabhupada says in the purport that the person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. That is his conviction. He thinks that simply by hard work he can achieve anything in his life. Simply by his particular action he can do anything. But he does not know the mechanism of body, because there are various factors in any action. Certainly, living entity, it is not that he is not at all doer, but living entity has only one part in action, that is desire. But that desire has to be sanctioned by the Supreme Lord, and then Supreme Lord instructs material nature. He doesn't have to physically instruct material nature understands, and then accordingly material nature makes arrangement through its agency of three modes to facilitate the desire of living entity. And in this way there are various types of demigods involved. For every limb there are demigod in charges, isn't it? Just like for eyes there is sun god, for tongue there is Agni, isn't it? For ears there are Dig Devatas. So they're all in charges and they make various actions take place, you know. So in this way there is an entire mechanism guided by the Supreme Lord, under the supervision of Supreme Lord. Entire mechanism is functioning in order for particular action to take place. So living entity is not the only doer. So there are so many things. So that's why there are a lot of factors behind any particular action and behind any particular situation. So materialistic person, he doesn't have this idea, and that's why Rupa says He takes credit for everything what he does, and this is a symptom of his nescience. So this is the nature of a materialistic person. At the same time, we have to also understand that that doesn't mean that living entity has no free will. Living entity is like a robot, artificial intelligence or machine. Is not like that. So that's how living entity cannot evade responsibility as well, because free will of the jiva will never disappear. There is a free will, and that's how there is a responsibility of jiva, because it is living entity who desires to do particular activity. But at the same time, the living entity's doership is made possible by body, senses, life airs, and all these are guiding under, or these things are done under the direction of Paramatma, who is the activator of all these things. So in this way, Jiva is not the only factor. So Jiva is one of the factors, but Jiva is responsible because it is a free will of Jiva who initiates everything. And in this way, Supreme Lord simply facilitates the desires of living entity and subsequent actions and reactions. So in this way, this is one of this verse is one of the several verses in Bhagavad Gita which discuss the doer, karta. So here Krishna is explaining that while foolish conditioned soul, he thinks himself the doer, in accomplishing any work, the work is actually being carried out by the three modes of material nature. Prabhupada in the purport, however, has specifically referred more to supreme doer, that is Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So because he is the person who facilitates everything, is ultimately everything is happening under Supreme Lord's control. Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. Like that. So now, this is the action of a person who is attached worker. Now, what is the state of those who are detached worker or devotional worker? That will be spoken in the next verse. Please recite 28th verse.
Okay, we'll start from beginning now. Abhishek Prabhu.
तत्त्ववित्तु महाभागो
Tattvavittu Mahabaho
महाभागो गुणकर्म विभागयोः
Gunakarma
गुणकर्मविभागयोः
Vibhagayoh
गुणागुणेषु वर्तन्त इति
Gunaguneshu
गुणगुणेषु
Vardanta
वर्तन्त
इति मत्वा न सज्जते
Iti
इति
Matva na
मत्वा न
Sajjate.
सज्जते.
Translation: One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results.
Yeah. So Prabhupada is saying that knower of the absolute truth is convinced. Convinced of what? His awkward position in material association. So such a tattvavit, this word tattvavit is very important. The person who is tattvavit, who is the knower of absolute truth, he understands that he is not this body. He is pure spirit soul who is part and parcel of Krishna. And in this way, he has been put into awkward situation of this material body with limited senses, and the body which is covered with ignorance. So in this way, he is put into awkward situation. Just like a person in the jail is in the awkward situation. Similarly, a living entity in this material world, he is in the awkward situation. So this way, Tattvavit is a person who knows about his real identity as the servant of Supreme Lord. And that's how when he realizes this, when he understands this, he understands that because I am part and parcel of Krishna, I should engage myself into Krishna's service. And in this way, he becomes naturally unattached to the activities of material senses. So he understands, Prabhupada says that material senses are circumstantial and temporary. So these senses don't remain with us forever, they are circumstantial. So at this particular life, we have got particular type of senses. In a next life, we may get another type of senses. So in this way, these senses are temporary. And that's why the senses sense objects, or one sense that likings, dislikings are also very circumstantial. They are not permanent. So in this way, a person in knowledge, he understands this, and in this way he engages himself in the service of the Lord. So such a person is called as Tattvavit, who knows his factual position in relationship with the Lord. So so this is what, here he is telling the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results in knowledge. So this theme is going to continue to the next verse also. The Tattvavit, or knower of the absolute truth, so how he thinks? He thinks, I am not this guna, I am not a quality of material nature, nor am I a product of any guna, nor do I have any connection with the gunas or the products of the gunas. So that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that he detaches himself by proper knowledge, he detaches himself from the three modes of material nature, and in this way he tries to become free from that. Okay, so 29th verse, please recite.
Aditya Gorangpu.
Yes, bro. Prakritir sammudha
Prakrute guna sammudha
sajjante guna karmasu
sajjante guna karmasu
tan akritsna vido mandan
tan
Krishna
krishna
Vido Vandam
kritsna vinna vichalayet.
krishna
Krishna
vinna
Vinna
vichalaye.
Vitalaye.
Translation: bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge.
Yeah. So certainly it is true that those such people who are attached to their work and fruits, they are in ignorance. But Krishna says, do not unsettle them. Although these duties are inferior, they are so much attached to particular duties of material world. These are all illusory duties of material world. But still do not unsettle them, Krishna says. So Prabhupada writes in purport that this body is a gift of material nature, and one who is too much attached to the body, the consciousness, is called manda, or lazy person without attachment, understanding of spirit soul. So this word comes here, mandan. Word manda comes. What is manda means? Manda means lazy person. In Marathi also this word is used sometimes. Say is manda. Manda means what? Lazy, or he doesn't have proper, he is in ignorance. He doesn't have proper understanding of spirit soul. So because of lacking such understanding, he becomes too much attached to the bodily consciousness. And Prabhupada says further, so social work, nationalism, altruism, these are some of the activities for such materially designated person. Those who are too much attached to material life, they either do sense gratification, if not, then extended sense gratification in the name of social work, nationalism, altruism. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in material field. And for such people, spiritual realization is something a myth. They think, hey, what is this? This is all Andhashraddha. They feel, oh, this is all mythology. That's what they consider. So in this way, they are not interested. But Prabhupada says, those who are enlightened in spiritual life should try not to agitate such materially engrossed person. Because if one agitates them, they will be so disturbed. They may cause disturbance to others also. And they themselves will become unsettled in their life. So Prabhupada says, better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently But such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similarly materially benevolent work. So, too much attachment to sense gratification is in mode of passion, and sometimes it can degrade to mode of ignorance in terms of violence, anger, and so on. So now, if they are not interested in Krishna consciousness, then rather than telling them that you are just a fool and rascal, better to not unsettle them. Better tell them that at least come to mode of goodness. At least uplift yourself from mode of passion to mode of goodness. If one is so attached in material life, okay, at least come to mode of goodness by following moral principles. At least come follow, some benevolent work, non-violence, all these things at least try to do. And in this way, they will slowly come to mode of goodness, and then they may get some knowledge of Krishna consciousness further. So, but Prabhupada says what further in the last paragraph? But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. So, although Krishna is saying that don't unsettle such people, but devotees are more merciful than the Lord, and that's why they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for human beings. So this is the answer, because we may have this question that if this is what Krishna is telling, don't unsettle, then why we are unsettling? Why don't we just find out first of all people in mode of goodness and then preach to only them, try to educate them only? That's a standard Vedic system actually. Vedic system is what the student, spiritual aspirant, he would go to Guru, and whoever would approach Guru would teach him his spiritual life. Whoever doesn't come to Guru would not go and unnecessarily unsettle such people. But Prabhupada is telling that, especially after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's incarnation, and Prabhupada, you know, he's telling what is our strategy. A devotee is more merciful. So he understands that even though this person, he may be ignorant, and then he may try to come to some material goodness and all, he may try to come, but lot of time may go wasted. And especially in Kali Yuga, the lifespan is very short. Life is very short. We don't have so much time. So he tries to directly preach to them, and that's how this is how our process of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Harinam Sankirtan is that there is no waiting for a person to come to mode of goodness and then try to understand this knowledge and all. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all subsequent acharyas, they directly preached Krishna consciousness to people. So we see Srila Prabhupada himself took that serious risk. We know that first person who met Srila Prabhupada in Bauri, he was a crazy man, but still Prabhupada tried to preach him, and he was trying to take up Krishna consciousness also. Prabhupada was kind of room partner with him. What was his name? David? David maybe, right? So Prabhupada was sharing room with him, and he was a crazy drug addicted person. Still Prabhupada tried to preach him because Prabhupada saw that, okay, he was trying to take some interest. Even Prabhupada wrote letter also to his god brothers that there is one person who is ready to become devotee. But then later on, this person proved to be very crazy, and he attacked Prabhupada very violently. Prabhupada's life was in threat. Prabhupada ran practically to the road in the night, and then he was like, homeless in the American country in the cold winters, night of America. So that is a risk a devotee takes. That although sometimes such ignorant people who may even become violent or sometimes make you trouble, still a devotee tries to preach Krishna consciousness everywhere around. So you can read the diaries of His Holiness Indradyumna Swami Maharaj. That diaries are examples of such great benevolent work, how devotees are so merciful, that how different types of risk devotees have taken in order to preach Krishna consciousness. So many examples you will find in this regards. All various diaries of His Holiness Indradyumna Swami Maharaj. There is one book also, Beating Drum Amongst Amazon. My God, it's so thrilling. So this is the merciful nature of devotee, that he takes this risk and tries his best to give Krishna consciousness to the person. So this explains why, we are doing this type of preaching them at all, if we are not supposed to unsettle them. So that's what Prabhupada is clarifying. Okay, so please recite 30th verse.
Akshay Prabhu.
मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि
Mai
मयि
sarvani
सर्वाणि
karmani
कर्माणि
सन्न्यास्याध्यात्मना चेतसा
sannyasyaatmatmashetasa
सन्न्यासात्मचेतसा
निराशीर्निर्मनो भूत्वा
nirashirnirmamo
निराशीर्निर्मनो
bhutva
भूत्वा
युध्यस्व विगतज्वरः
yudhyasva
युध्यस्व
vigatahajvara.
विगतज्वरः।
Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight.
Yeah. So, previous verse, Krishna spoke how, rather than pushing one who lacks knowledge to renounce his false activities, the wise will engage him in the activities that will lead to knowledge. Hmm. So, either engage him in Krishna consciousness directly, or at least try to inspire him to come to mode of goodness by doing some altruistic activities and following some moral codes. Hmm. So, but of course, as Prabhupada said, that devotee's mood is self-sacrificing and compassionate. Hmm. So emphasizing detachment for an unqualified person may lead him to a worse condition if he is without positive work in Krishna consciousness. This is one of the very important point Krishna is telling, that especially those people who are too much materially attached, if one too much forces them for detachment, whereas he is not qualified for renunciation, then he goes into worse situation. So this is how sometimes people, because devotees were asking also, some of the devotees asked that, if Krishna is so much emphasizing on performing prescribed duties, then what about brahmacharis? They should also do some work and all that. Yes. So even if somebody becomes a brahmachari, he also has to have solid engagement in Krishna's service. Otherwise, he'll be in difficulty. He should be thoroughly engaged in Lord's service of the Lord. So he has some proper duty directly in service to Krishna, which are directly services to Krishna. If that's what he does, he's thoroughly engaged apart from his sadhana, then he can go on and on and on for whole life. There is no problem. He can very happily and peacefully go on. But if he gives up, the prescribed duties out of laziness, which is what is going spoken in this verse, out of laziness or frustration, he gives up prescribed duties. And here also he doesn't take up duties of serving Krishna. He doesn't take up services for the Lord. He doesn't engage himself thoroughly into service of the Lord. Then he will be in a difficult situation. So that's why the person has to be qualified. He has to engage fully in the service of the Lord. Then he can surely become detached from the prescribed duties and material activities like that. So now, while all these verses till 29th verse, all these verses they described about Nishkama Karma Yoga. But this 30th verse which we read just now, Krishna is telling Arjun to perform Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is what? Bhakti Yoga is for a devotee whose goal is Krishna. So Nishkama Karma Yogi may not be always devotee. He may do work with detachment, but there is a devotee who doesn't do work only with detachment. He does work with attachment to Krishna. He does work for pleasure of Krishna. And that's where Krishna is directly speaking over here. He's describing bhakti. So he's telling, surrendering all your works unto me. You should work, but you should work for my pleasure, Krishna is telling. And also you should work with full knowledge of me. Like that. So here in purport, so one of the lectures, His Holiness Radhan Swami Maharaj, what he was telling that these two two terminologies are coming here. Nirashihi. Nirashi means one who is without desire for profit. So without greed. So in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Duryodhan was fighting out of greed. Isn't it? He was greedy. And that's why he was foolish. Then Arjun wanted to discard fighting because of Jwara. Jwara means lethargy. He was trying to become lethargic. And in this way, Krishna is instructing, he is telling us to overcome laziness and foolishness. So Duryodhan was fool. Why? Because he was working for his greed. And Arjun wanted to be lazy. So Krishna is telling what is the right thing here in this verse. What is the right thing to do? To work hard for Krishna's pleasure. That is the right thing to do. So purport Prabhupada says that the Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties. And how Lord is instructing? As if in the military discipline. So Krishna is ordering Arjun as if in a military discipline, just like a sergeant or commander, he orders his soldiers, not a march ahead or something, whatever, left, right, he tells, do this, do that, and the soldiers have to follow it, isn't it? So same way, Krishna is ordering Arjun in a military discipline. Now, Prabhupada is aware what happens when we receive such orders in military disciplines. Such injunctions may make things a little difficult. These injunctions are not so easy to follow, isn't it? They are little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out with dependence of Krishna, because that is the constitutional position of living entity. So although Krishna consciousness in a conditioned state, especially in the beginning, is difficult little bit, but Prabhupada says one must carry out one's duties in Krishna consciousness, because that is the constitutional position of living entity. So if one carries out one's duties in Krishna consciousness, over the period of time one's heart will be purified, and the duties of Krishna consciousness will not remain any more troublesome or burdensome. They will become very pleasurable, because that's the original situation of living entity. Original state of living entities to serve Krishna. But in the condition says it is little difficult. Just like for a person who has got which disease by which he appears sugarcane juice to be bitter?
Jaundice.
Jaundice.
Correct. So one who has got jaundice, what happens? Sugarcane juice appears to be bitter for him. But if he continues to take sugarcane juice, eventually that he will be able to taste, the sweetness of sugarcane juice. So Arjun was therefore ordered by Krishna to fight as if Lord was his military commander. Lord had told that he will not lift a weapon, but he was acting like a military commander to Arjun. And that's why he was ordering Krishna Krishna was ordering Arjun that you must fight. One has to sacrifice everything for the goodwill of the Supreme Lord, and at the same time discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. This is the art of work. Prabhupada is telling in the purport. Sacrificing everything for the goodwill of the Supreme Lord, and at the same time discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. So Prabhupada says, Arjun did not have to consider the order of the Lord. He has to only execute his order. He doesn't have to think whether to follow or not. He should simply execute the order of Krishna. The Supreme Lord is the soul of all souls, and therefore one who depends solely and wholly on the Supreme Soul without personal consideration, or in other words, one who is fully Krishna conscious, is called Adhyatma Chetas. So you remember this word is coming over here, Adhyatma Chetaha. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa, offering all your activities unto me and with full knowledge of me and dependence on me. So what is Adhyatma Chetas? Chetas means a person who understands Krishna to be soul of all souls, and in this way he depends solely and wholly on Supreme Lord without personal consideration. In other words, he is fully Krishna conscious. So Prabhupada, this purport is giving very elaborate explanation of every word from the verse. So first Prabhupada spoke about Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyasya. Then how? By Adhyatma Chetasa. Then next Prabhupada says about Nirashir. Nirashir means without personal desires. So one has to act on the order of the master, but should not expect fruitive results. Karmanneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. So he should follow the order of the Lord, but don't expect fruitive results. And Prabhupada gives the example of cashier. Cashier may be counting so much money. He may have lakhs of money. My father was also cashier before retiring in the bank. So he used to tell, आज इतने लाख गिने, आज इतने करोड़ गिने. Used to tell like that. So used to think, oh, father must be having lot of lakhs of rupees. But that was not his salary. Salary was something different. So Prabhupada gives that example that a cashier may be counting lot of money, but he doesn't take that money for himself. He just does it, the transaction, for his employer. He doesn't claim a cent for himself. Similarly, Prabhupada says that a devotee should understand that nothing belongs to him, everything belongs to the Lord. So that is Nirashir. Nirashir means not expecting any fruitive results. Now, Nirmama. Nirmama means nothing is mine. So if you must have seen some yajna sacrifices. So what they say? Anybody knows?
Indraya swaha idam namamo.
Swaha idam
Idam
namama.
namamo.
So that is always there. Swaha word generally is very loudly spoken, so it is understood. So swaha means what? Swaha is that Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyasya, offering all results unto the yajna. All the activities to be done swaha in yajna. And then Nirmama. Nirmama means it is not mine. So this is, I am sacrificing for yajna. This is not mine. That's what is said. Idam Vishnave swaha, idam namama. They say. Idam Krishnaya swaha, idam namama. So this is not mine. So what is the understanding? So this is very well known to all of you that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. So everything belongs to Krishna. So all my property, all my relatives, everybody is Krishna's child. Everybody is Krishna's energy. So with this understanding, a living entity, a devotee, he does not claim proprietorship, and that's why he is called as Nirmama. Now, next verse Prabhupada says, if there is any reluctance to execute such a stern order is not so loving, it is stern. Of course, it is loving only. There is a love behind that sternness, but it is spoken in a very stern manner, Prabhupada says. So stern order, which is without consideration of so-called kinsman in the bodily relationship, that reluctance should be thrown off. In this way, one may become vigata jwara, without feverish mentality or lethargy. So jwara literally means fever. कहते ना इनको ज्वर आ गया है, means उनको fever आ गया है. So, but also another meaning of jwara is lethargy. So generally in a feverish situation, person doesn't want to do anything, right? He just want to lie down. So Arjun also was exhibiting similar symptoms. He did not want to fight. So that's why he says that, the lethargy to not follow Krishna's order should be given up. That is called as Vigata Jwara. So these are all various, things are mentioned. So these are all very important. So verse for all the devotees, how to act in this world. One should become free from lethargy, perform one's prescribed duties for Krishna's pleasure, don't claim proprietorship, Don't expect fruitive results, but surrender all one's activities unto Krishna. So that's the ideal platform with which a devotee performs. So this leads to path of liberation. This leads to liberation. So in this way, Krishna, he is ordering Arjun to fight, but also he is telling in what consciousness Arjun should fight. He should not simply fight because all others are also fighting. Fighting is not something just fighting in itself is not glorious thing. He is telling in what consciousness you should fight. Without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship. This indicate freedom from mode of passion. Because passionate person always wants profit and he claims proprietorship. So Krishna is telling Arjun that you should nirashir and nirmama. So means become free from mode of passion. Now vikadajvara, Krishna is telling means freed from lethargy, means become free from mode of ignorance. Do you remember Krishna told how the people in material people work? They are conducted, although they are conducted by three modes of material nature, but they think themselves to be doer. So here that's why Krishna is telling become free from passion, become free from ignorance. Now, knowledge of the difference between soul and body is also simply born of the mode of goodness. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam. 14th verse Krishna is going to speak. 14th chapter. Sattvat sanjayate jnanam. So, but Krishna is telling Arjun even go beyond mode of goodness also. What is that? Full knowledge, that is soul's eternal relationship with Krishna. So that's why Mai Sarvani Karmani. So he's telling go beyond knowledge and surrender all your works unto me. Go beyond goodness and surrender all your works unto me. So this is what Nishkama Karma, fighting in goodness, becomes Bhakti Yoga. That is detached work done in devotion for Krishna's pleasure. If one knows Nishkama karma is more or less in mode of goodness. So, but somebody does it as in surrendering to Krishna, then it becomes Bhakti Yoga. Why? Because such a work is done for Krishna's pleasure. So, although Krishna has often requested Arjun to act on the platform of detachment and duty, he now reveals his actual desire that Arjun should not just act on the platform of detachment and duty, he should also perform his actions, his fighting with devotion to Krishna. So that's how it is Bhakti Yoga. This verse is touching Bhakti Yoga now. Okay, so 31st verse, please recite.
Guruji, I have a small question. Can we take just quick
We can
question?
do it later on. Otherwise, just we have to
Yes, yes.
cover up some verses. So
Yes,
I will
yes.
take your
Okay.
questions at
Aman Kumar.
Yes, bro. ये मे मतमिदं
ye me matamidam nityam
अनुतिष्ठन्ति मानवः
anutishtanti
Anutishtanti
manava
manavaha
श्रद्धावन्तो नाशुयन्तो
shraddhavanto na
shraddhavanto
suyashuto
nashuyanto
मुच्यन्ते तेऽपि कर्मभिः
muchanti
muchyante
te
te api
vikarmabhi.
karmabhihi.
Translation. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of motive actions.
Yes. So Krishna is telling in this verse, what is the result of following my teachings? What is the result of following Krishna's teachings? So the result is they become free from those who faithfully follow Krishna's teachings, Shraddhavanto, without envy, Anusoyanto, they become free from bondage. Muchyante karmabhihi. They become free from the bondage of fruitive actions and reactions. Now, this purport is extremely important. The injunction of Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom and therefore eternally true without exception. Essence of Vedas is what? instructions of Krishna. Krishna is the person who is the compiler of the Vedas also. Vedanta Krut Veda Videva Chaham. He is the knower of the Vedas, and that's why from Vedas Krishna is to be known. So that's why Krishna's instructions are the essence of Vedas. But then Prabhupada says ahead that there are many philosophers who write commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, but without faith on Krishna. So that is not proper. They will not become free from bondage if they don't have faith on Krishna. Now, please pay very much careful attention. Prabhupada says, but an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because he is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. This is very, very important for all sadhakas like us. Many times we hear a lot of things in the lecture, very high principles are spoken, and there are two attitudes, a devotee may develop. Wrong attitudes I am talking about. One wrong attitude is of resentfulness. One may think, oh, it is all too much. Krishna is speaking too much. This is not proper. अरे इतना सब थोड़ी कर सकते. So another wrong attitude is nirashir, hopelessness. One may think, oh, it is so high, I am so low, I am not able to follow them, so it is all hopeless situation. Why to get into spiritual life at all? It's too high, things are expected. So better don't, better be materialistic only. So in this way, these two type of wrong attitudes may come. But Prabhupada, that's why he's giving guideline for sadhakas like us, that first of all, have faith in Krishna's injunctions, that they are eternally true and they are the best things. So although a devotee, he may hear a lot of things, like we hear Trunadapi Sunichena, Tarorapi Sahishtuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtani Sadahari. One may not be able to become exactly immediately after hearing this, one may not be able to become really the, what do you say? One may not become immediately lower than the blade of grass, humble like a blade of grass. One may not be able to become immediately like tolerant like a tree. So one may not be able to immediately follow. So in this regards, Prabhupada is to sometimes give example, just like when the seed is sown, it's not that immediately whole tree manifests. Similarly, when we hear Krishna conscious philosophy, it is like getting the seeds. Now, when we repeatedly hear, that hearing is like sinchan, as it is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita also. It is like watering the seed by reading, hearing and philosophy. It's like a watering the seed, and slowly, slowly the tree or creeper will grow. So immediately after hearing, we may not be able to immediately develop all these qualities to perfection. So that is fine, Prabhupada says. But one should have faith that these are the injunctions of the Lord and they are the best things. That is the highest knowledge. And this is what is my goal. This is where I want to go. So don't become resentful for principles of Bhagavad Gita. Keep faith on them and try to work sincerely. Although sometimes one is defeated, although one has here heard so much of philosophy, sometimes one is defeated, isn't it? One is fails miserably to follow these things. But Prabhupada says, don't become hopeless still. So work sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness. Sometimes we may feel, अरे कितने सालों से सुन रहा हूँ भक्ति, कितने सालों से कर रहा हूँ, कितने सालों से फिलोसॉफी सुन रहा हूँ, अभी भी लस्ट है, अभी भी एंगर है, अभी भी ग्रीड है, but we have accumulated it for millions of lifetimes. It cannot go within 10 years of practice or 7 years of practice. We have to be patient also. That's what Prabhupada says, that a tree will not immediately come out as soon as the seed is sown. There is a process of cultivation. So these things, the process of getting rid of anarthas and developing attachment to Krishna, it's a process of cultivation. Sometimes we may get defeated into it, but don't become hopeless. One still continue to perform sincerely, and if one continues to do so, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada is giving assurance. So this purport is so important for sadhakas like us, because these days this question comes a lot: what is a hope, Prabhu? These principles are so high, I am not able to follow them. So that's why this purport should be written by the devotees, separately in a notebook, and keep on reading it again and again, particularly these particular lines, that even though one may not be able to perfectly follow these things, but if one is trying, one is sincerely trying, one is just making an endeavor, sometimes he may be able to successfully follow, sometimes he is defeated in following those things, orders of Krishna. But he doesn't become resentful of the principles of Krishna consciousness. He doesn't become resentful, he doesn't become averse, and also gives up hopelessness, and in this way, he, with faith on Krishna's words, he continues on, he keeps on trying. One of the beauty of devotional service is that endeavor itself is perfection. Krishna becomes pleased with endeavors of the devotee. So even though one may not be perfect, but if one is endeavoring, Krishna is pleased with that devotee, and that's what is a perfection, isn't it? Ultimate perfection is pleasure of Krishna. So if one is endeavoring sincerely, Krishna is pleased, isn't it? So in this way, devotee should not become hopeless. He should understand that because I am trying, Krishna is pleased, and ultimately the perfection is in hands of Krishna. So whenever he wants, he will give me perfection, like that. So this is the way a person should perform himself, conduct himself. So this is very, very important purport, especially these last few lines for devotees. So yeah. So now next verse, 32nd verse, please recite.
Anil Sahu Prabhu.
Yatvayetad abhyasuyanto nanutishtanti me matam sarvajnana vimudhamstam viddhi nashtan achetasah.
But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings, do not follow them regularly, are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, peaceful and tuned in their endeavor to perfection.
Yeah, I think there is some network issue with you, Anil Prabhu. Your voice is coming like a robo's voice. So anyways, we could hear, but
Okay. It is okay, or I can read again?
no, it's fine. We could hear. Now it is coming properly. Human voice, devotee's voice. Yeah. So in this, now Krishna is telling what is the result of disregarding my teachings. Previous verse was telling what is the result of following my teachings. Krishna was telling. This verse is telling what is the result of disregarding my teachings. So somebody abhyasuyantaha, out of envy, who do not follow Krishna's teachings, and such a person is, Krishna says, is devoid of all knowledge and discrimination, and he is fooled and ruined. Yeah. So Prabhupada says in the purport that as there is punishment for disobedience to the order of supreme executive head or government, if one disobeys government, or any executive head of any institution, if one does not execute his orders, then there is a punishment. Prabhupada says, so there is certainly punishment for disobedience to the order of supreme personality of Godhead. Like that. Prabhupada says in the purport. So, so on one hand, Krishna is telling there is a success. On the other hand, there is ruination. That is choice for Arjun. The choice of success or ruination. If he follows Krishna's injunction, there will be success. If he doesn't follow, there will be ruination. Now, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan says that the question arises, why do people who transgress your desire not fear punishment from you, as criminals should fear punishment from the king? So those who transgress your desire, why they don't fear punishment? So the answer is in next verse. So please recite 33rd verse.
Anirudh Prabhu.
सदृशं चेतस स्वस्य
Sadrusham
स्वास्य
cheshtate
Sadrusham
swasyaha
chestate swasya
प्रकृतेर्ज्ञानवान् अपि
prakruterjnanavanapi
प्रकृतेर्ज्ञानवानपि
प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि
prakrutim yanti bhutani
प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि
निग्रह किं करिष्यति
nigraha kim
निग्रहः
karishyati.
किं करिष्यति
Translation: Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can represent uh, accomplish?
Yeah. So even a person who is aware of punishment of sinful actions, he is not afraid of committing them. Sometimes he is afraid, sometimes he may not be, not necessarily. Why? Because such people are impelled to act sinfully due to strong past habits and impression, vasanas and sanskaras. There are past vasanas and sanskaras which impel person to do sinful activities. So even a person of knowledge may act according to his swabhav, nature. What to speak of a person who is ignorant or is unaware of punishment? So, what to speak of him? So Prabhupada in the purport ahead, he writes that academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. One has knowledge, but because of long association with material nature, such a person is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in the prescribed duties in terms of material existence. Therefore, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. So basically, Prabhupada is telling one should continue his occupational duties along with practice of Krishna consciousness. Unless and until one becomes fully Krishna conscious, one should not give up one's prescribed duties. No one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. It should be done under superior training. Better to do act in that way rather than becoming a artificial renunciate. So thus one may become free from the clutches of Krishna's Maya. So if one is not fully Krishna conscious, especially if one is not able to fully practice spiritual life, and if one renounces, again Krishna is repeating the same concept, then there will be big trouble. The repression will not be good. So in this way, in this verse, Krishna spoke about how deep rooted are the conditioned nature of a person. So that's why he's telling Nigraha kim karishyati. What is the repression? How what it will accomplish? So there are scriptural injunctions which are called as Nigraha of Nishkama Karma Yoga. So they can purify and enlighten the impure hearted person. So the scriptural injunctions of Jnana Yoga can purify and enlighten the pure hearted person. But neither of them can purify extremely impure hearted person. Nigraha kim karishyati. That's why it is said. So these are the limitations of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. That Nishkama Karma Yoga can purify impure hearted and Jnana Yoga can purify pure hearted. But neither can purify the extremely impure hearted person. But Bhakti Yoga, which arises from the causeless mercy of Krishna and the association of his saintly devotees, can deliver even the most sinful persons. So, because unless and until person is fully transcendentally situated, he cannot become free from the three modes of material nature. And that's why Bhakti Yoga he engages one in the direct service of Krishna, and because of that, what happens? That person can overcome the influence of three modes of material nature. Yeah. So in this way, we can see that Maya, despite one's intelligence, is invested with the potency to push conditioned souls away from Krishna consciousness. Although conditioned soul may have knowledge also, he may have intelligence also, but sometimes Maya can push him away from Krishna consciousness. So that's why practice of Krishna consciousness is important. One has to remain firm under the guidance of superior training, Prabhupada says. That's why appropriate guidance is required in life. Then one can become free from the clutches of Maya. Like that. So anyways, our time is up for today. No, okay. One more verse we can take. 34th verse, please recite.
Aradhan Prabhu. Sorry, Ankush Prabhu. Sorry, Ankush Prabhu.
Sadrusham
34th verse.
Indriyasendrasyaarthe
Indriyasendrasyaarthe
Ragadvesho
Ragadvesho vyavastito
Yornavasham Agathe
Tayorna vashamagatyet
Tau Hayasya Paripanthinau
Tauhya asya paripanthinau.
Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings.
Hey, what is your reading? 34th verse translation.
Is different. This one. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization.
Yes, please read purport.
Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement, but one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise, they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet, we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of self gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always a chance of an accident even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all. But attachment to Krishna consciousness or acting always in the loving service of Krishna detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, so this verse is speaking about gradual purification. So there are principles to regulate attachment, raga and dvesha. Yeah. So attachment means bringing one's senses in contact with their objects. Aversion means hatred for those who obstruct one's sense enjoyment. So Krishna is telling one should not fall under the control of such attachment and aversions, both the things. So now there are, according to the dictates of modes of nature, the conditioned living entity, he does whatever his mind suggests, isn't it? Generally the attachment is very strong, and that's why the mind, living entity just becomes the faithful servant of mind, conditioned living entity. Because the mind is surrendered to the senses, whatever we are attached to, raga, we do, and whatever we are averse to, we avoid. Whatever is favorable for sense enjoyment, we uh, we like to do that, and we do it, and whatever is unfavorable for sense enjoyment, one wants to avoid that. But Krishna here is instructing that our action should be based on should not be based on attachment and such aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So we see that our senses are generally attracted to pleasures of this world, especially money, sex, and other things. And generally the material senses are repulsed by spiritual objects like holy places, fastings, or selflessly following the orders of Guru, and other rules and regulations which limit our sense enjoyment. Our mind doesn't like such things. But Shastras, they dictate us to shift our raga and dvesha away from sense gratification. How? By encouraging us to perform our duty with ultimate aim of acting only for Krishna's pleasure. Like that. So in this purport, Prabhupada is essentially explaining one concept. See, one thing is that living entity is strongly attached in material world. Now, it is not possible for him to become totally detached. So complete detachment is on the one side, and thorough attachment is on another side. These are the two things. Now, if a living entity is so attached, thoroughly attached to material world, if you tell him that you immediately give up, he may externally give up, but he will not be able to internally give up. So that's why Shastras give what? Regulated sense enjoyment. He cannot become fully free from sense gratification. So regulated sense gratification, because unlimited sense gratification will ruin the person. He will simply go astray. So that's why there is a regulated sense gratification. If one engages into unrestricted sense gratification, he will degrade down. So regulated sense gratification, Shastras give, so that a living entity becomes gradually free from sense gratification. He may not be able to abruptly become free from sense gratification, but slowly, slowly he becomes. So that's why there is a control. Controlled sense gratification is allowed. And that's why Prabhupada gives example of sex life. It's a controlled manner allowed. Now, Prabhupada says at the same time, do not become too much attached to this regulation also. So one should not think that, oh, this is what I am following Vedic injunctions now. I am following I am doing regulated sense gratification according to Vedas, so I am the best person. So one should understand that ultimately this sense gratification is unnatural for soul, and that's how, Prabhupada, that's why I give example of can be accidents even on the royal roads. So one should not become too much attached to regulations also, but instead of that, transfer one's attachment to Krishna. So in this way, slowly, slowly, one will become free from the enjoying propensity, the propensity of sense gratification. One will become free from that, and one will be situated in his natural position of being attached to Krishna. So yes, one may engage into regulated sense gratification according to scriptures, but one should not become attached to even such regulations. One should become attached to Krishna, and if one becomes attached to Krishna, eventually he will be free from all bondage. So this is what concept Prabhupada is telling. So that's why Prabhupada says one should not, no one should try to become detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. Don't become detached from Krishna consciousness. Goal is to become detached from sense gratification, not from Krishna consciousness. Like that. Okay, so we'll stop here for today, and next week we'll continue. So we are all almost, mostly next week. Let's see if we can complete the third chapter next Thursday. We can try to complete the third chapter. Let's see. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Granthara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah, so there was some question. Now I am available to answer. Because I had to also, complete the verse. I also have deadlines, just like all of you have deadlines in your job and studies. So I also have deadlines. So that's why, and there has to be some justice to be done also. We are not able to read every line of purport, but we have to do some justice to even the concepts which Prabhupada is speaking. So that's why little questions I am taking afterwards. So somebody was asking a question before. I did not see the name.
I think it was Asim Prabha Prabhu.
Yeah, is he there?
Let me check. No, he's not there.
Okay. So there is another question. Does verse 32? Okay, what is verse 32? Yeah. So what about this verse? Thus verse 32 is pointing towards Mayavadis and impersonalists, as in last words of translation. Lord is about getting ruined in endeavors for perfection. Those who out of envy disregard his teachings, do not follow them regularly, have to be considered bereft of all. Oh, it refers to everyone. Not only Mayavadis and impersonalists, even to materialistic persons also, and even yogis also, even devotees also, one sense. Like that. Because when we say endeavors for perfection, perfection can refer to material perfection also. Perfection can be perfection in yoga siddhis. Perfection can be in terms of impersonal Brahmajyoti liberation. Perfection in terms of love of Godhead. There are various understandings of perfection. But whatever perfection one is aspiring for, if one does not properly follow the injunctions of Krishna, then that's how such a person is ruined, Krishna says. That's what I understand from this. Okay, so we'll stop.
One question.
Yes, bro.
Hare Krishna, Pradyudandat Pranam. So at 34 verse, it is told at end that by any means one should be detached from all. One must avoid that regulated sense enjoyment also. What does it mean, Prabhuji, exactly in reference to our life?
Suppose take an example of eating now. So there is a generally our tongue and mind, we want to eat unlimitedly and unrestrictedly, but that is not proper. So that's why there is a regulation put upon us that we should eat only Krishna Prasadam. Like that. And now for attached personality like us, sometimes we may, we are allowed to, offer nice foodstuffs to Krishna and eat Krishna Prasadam, which the items even we like. Those items also we can offer to Krishna and accept as Krishna Prasadam. So in this way, one cannot become fully free from this desire to eat nice foodstuffs. One has in fact the tendency to eat nice foodstuffs, but that is regulated, that you can eat only based on prasadam consideration. Don't eat here and there. Now this is spoken. At the same time, it is not that if one day one doesn't get prasadam of one's liking, one should become very upset. Because if one says that every day I want feast because I like feast, or feast according to my desire, so that is like, yes, Krishna Prasad ही ले रहा हूँ, rules and regulations में ही follow कर रहा हूँ, but I want to eat only the items of my liking. So that way, there can be problem also. One should not become so attached also, because if one is too much attached to only particular items, even though they may be prasadam, so it can also bring a stumbling block in our Krishna consciousness. So one should accept prasadam. Sometimes there may not be a things to our liking. So in this way, even though there may be regulated sense gratification, certainly the unregulated sense gratification is not at all accepted. But even though there may be regulated sense gratification, we should not become too attached to it. Krishna says, rather than that, develop attachment for, Krishna, directly some Krishna conscious activities. So one, even though one may be doing sense gratification in a regulated manner, don't remain attached to that. Sometimes you may not get that sense gratification also. So you should not become too much depressed because of not getting that particular sense gratification. So better attached to Krishna. So if one sees that, okay, I love gulab jamuns very much, but I want to eat every day gulab jamun, but it is not possible. So some days I may not get. So that's all right. Whatever prasad comes, whatever prasad is available, let me accept that as prasad of the Lord. So this is attachment to Krishna. If one is attached to prasad, it is attachment to Krishna. But prasad should be actually seen as prasad, irrespective of what items comes in prasad, right? So that is attachment to Krishna. But if one says no, every day there should be gulab jamuns, I'll eat only prasadam gulab jamuns, no outside gulab jamuns. But that should not be attachment to that also. That every day prasadam gulab jamun should be there with me. So this is a crude example. I'm explaining with a very crude example. Is it okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. I was speaking about 20th verse. If you look at this translation of that,
28.
20th, 20.
20. Okay, 20 verse. Janak Maharaj.
Yeah, the first line says that kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. So can you explain this? Because it wasn't probably just the prescribed duties, and because he was a devotee, so he did a devotional service, and that gave him the perfection rather than saying just the prescribed duty. So I didn't understand that part.
So there are two things. Again, it refers to, as we discussed before, there are two types of Nishkama Karma Yogis. One is a devotee Nishkama Karma Yogi. One may be not a devotee Nishkama Karma Yogi, but is transcendentalist. So now, perfection can, for such a Nishkama Karma Yogi, who is not a devotee, also can mean that he comes on a Brahman realization also. Because Brahman realization also is one level of perfection. So now that is also considered to be at least one level glorious, because he has come out of the cycle of birth and death. He has become free from material existence. So now there may be some person who may just perform his prescribed duties without Krishna element into it, and then come to the level of perfection. He will come to mode of goodness eventually. So from that he may come to Bhakti Yoga, and he may become a devotee also and attain a devotional perfection. But somebody may not take to the path of Bhakti, but become an impersonalist, and he may attain the perfection of getting into impersonal Brahma Jyoti. So that perfection is also, for a Nishkama Karma Yogi, that is also one sense is considered to be perfection, at least from his point of view. So Jnana Yogis and Nishkama Karma Yogis, some of them aspire for even impersonal liberation. Some of them aspire for Paramatma realization, and they become yogis. But some of them become devotees like that. So their respective perfections. So now when it comes to kings like Janak Maharaj, so there are other kings who might have attained impersonal liberation, but Janak Maharaj attained devotional perfection, that is being a pure devotee of the Lord. So now here Krishna is referring a general terminology that even if one practices only prescribed duties, but he may slowly grow. That's what is a step-by-step process. He may grow through step-by-step process. Eventually, he may come to the platform of being a devotee. So right from Karma Kanda, so now he performs his prescribed duties in a Karma Kanda. Then slowly he comes to the advances himself to the platform of Sakama Karma Yoga, then Nishkama Karma Yoga, then Jnana Yoga, then Ashtanga Yoga, and ultimately Bhakti Yoga. So that way also one can attain perfection. But the basis was what? Prescribed duties. वो करते 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 he obtained knowledge and eventually he attained perfection. Like that. So and again there are varieties of perfections. Other kings might have attained perfection in terms of various ways, like that. At the same time, Janak Maharaj example is more referred. The more ashay of this particular verse is that although he was perfect, still he performed his prescribed duties. That is more of a implied meaning over here, that he was fully self-realized, but he did not give up his prescribed duties. For what? To set an example for others. That's a more implicit meaning over here. So somebody does prescribed duties according to Vedas also, he can surely attain perfection in a gradual process, step-by-step process. That is possible.
Thank you.
Okay, bro. Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Hare Bol.
Hari Bol. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.